What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing one of my all-time favorites, which is none other than the reading wrap-up. For those of you that are new, my name is Jaya, and here in this little corner of the internet, we talk all things books. I may have a slight addiction and a slight problem to collecting, reading, enjoying, talking about, living through books. And so here in this corner, we definitely have a fiction addiction and we support each other in it. If that sounds like something you are interested in, definitely consider sticking around for the video. Today, we will be talking about all 12 books that have been consumed and read in the month of December. It's reading time here at JB's Corner. The first thing I want to say is that the November reads were definitely a little bit all over the place. And I did realize in my previous statement, I said that it was the books that were consumed in December. That should definitely say November. I sincerely apologize. Today is December 2nd, which is why I'm thinking of December. My mistake. But no, these are the 12 reads that were completed in the month of November that are being reported in the month of December. My apologies. But since there are quite a few, I would definitely consider grabbing a warm beverage if you're in the mood for that, a tea, a coffee. If you want to have a drink as you're winding down, whatever your beverage of choice is, whether it's a mocktail, a cocktail, a glass of wine, a nice Olipop soda, or just some water, would definitely recommend getting that now because we got some delicious goodies to get into. The first book that I want to talk about is The Gingerbread Bakery. Now, this book I think I absolutely adored. This is the 5th book in the Dream Harbor series, written by Laurie Gilmore. It is basically a very, very fun enemies to lover book / second chance romance that is taking place between Mack and Annie. Now, this book I think has been in the works since book 1 because we are introduced to these characters in the very first book and we get to watch the wedding of the characters in the very first book in this book, and we see Annie and Mack having to reconnect and rekindle their romance and their passion and really explain what happened in the past that led to their estrangement in the first place, as they're also navigating their best man and best woman duties, maid of honor duties for the wedding. I think this book was very, very cute. It was set in more of a holiday Christmas kind of tone. So it's cold, it's wintry, it's very holiday vibes. And I just thoroughly adored this book. I will say this has probably been one of my favorites in the Dream Harbor series since the initial book that came out, which was the Pumpkin Cafe, which was absolutely adorable and I loved it. If you are a fan of Gilmore Girls, Heart of Dixie, shows like that where they really capture the essence of small town, these books are definitely for you, and they're definitely wrapped up in a little bit of town charm along with a little bit of spice and romance. Now, I won't go home and say that the writing is absolutely incredible and it's one of the books that are going to become your all-time favorites necessarily, but it's the perfect read for the holiday vibes for sure, and I definitely ended up giving this book a solid 4 stars for that reason. The next book that I want to talk about is a book that I've actually talked about in another video as well, which was my Fredrik Backman book review. So I'm just going to briefly mention both actually of the Fredrik Backman books that I read this month. And I'm not going to go into too much detail with them since I did do a video dedicated to this author, and I will still maintain that he has written some of the most incredible works of fiction that I have ever read. This is an author that I think no matter what he puts out, what he creates, I will be reading it because he is just such a stunning writer. Now, the first one I read is actually one of his older books, which is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. This is a very sweet story, basically following the story of a young girl who is a little bit different than the rest of her classmates. She has, it's hard to fully understand exactly what she has. I don't know if it's like neurodivergent or autistic. I didn't fully get a definition for what it is that she has or if it's ADHD, but whatever it is, she doesn't quite play with the other kids the way that she's expected to. She's a young girl with a lot of spunk and a lot of character, and her best friend in the whole wide world is her grandmother. And she understands things and she understands people through stories. In this story, her grandmother was a very, very strong woman who basically spent her life helping those in need. But in the midst of trying to help everybody else, she sometimes had a little bit of an estranged relationship with her daughter. So her granddaughter became the priority when she was born, and now they've been best friends forever. And now all of a sudden she's finding out, the little girl that is, that her grandmother has passed on. And her grandmother has left her a set of letters to give away to her friends and her family and people in her past that she wants to say sorry to. And we basically, through these letters, as well as the events that follow after them, get to learn more about the grandmother's character, the relationships of the various characters within this book, as well as a feel for who this little girl is going to grow up to be, and the story of her grandmother on a more human level. This book was originally published in 2013 and then translated in 2015. It is one of his earlier works, as I mentioned, and it was still absolutely beautiful and stunning. This is also the prequel to Britt Marie Was Here, which is a book that I had talked about previously when I had finished that book. Overall, all I can say is it was absolutely stellar. This was a solid 4-star read, and I would definitely recommend it. The next book that I ended up reading by this man is My Friends. This is the newest novel that he released this year in 2025, and it is by far one of the best books that I've ever read. It kind of follows the story of 3-4 friends as they go through adolescence and kind of the experiences they've gone through in a small town, coming from different levels and backgrounds, and the trajectory that their lives took as they became adults. Now, in adulthood, we don't fully know what happened to all the friends, and the backstory is kind of shared with us throughout the course of this book. So it's a little bit of flashback, a little bit of present. In the present, there's a young girl named Louisa who wants nothing more than to see a painting that means everything to her based on a postcard that she received. She's a young woman who's lost everything. Her best friend just died. She's gone from foster home to foster home, and she's just trying to find her way, and art is what grounds her. In the process of trying to break into the museum to see the piece of art, she inadvertently ends up meeting the artist himself, who then declares that she is one of them. Through this, when the artist, who is very, very sick, ends up passing on, she ends up inheriting a very valuable piece from him, and thereby also becomes entwined in the life of one of the artist's remaining best friend. And as they journey together to figure out what to do with this item that has been given to her, she also learns the story of the artist and his friends. And it is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. I cried, I laughed, I smiled, I did all kinds of things with this book. Solid 5-star read, would definitely recommend. The next book that I want to talk about is Of Monsters and Mainframes. Now, this book is by Barbara Truelove, and it was adorable and hilarious. In this book, we have a ship named Demeter, along with her AI system on board, who is a doctor as well, and called Steward. And all they're trying to do is basically transport humans between Earth and Alpha Centauri and back. Unfortunately, every single time she just wants to do her job, and all of her passengers keep winding up dead. And no matter what she does, for some unfathomable reason, the humans who are docked at Alpha Centauri as well as on Earth don't believe the tales that she has to tell. So Demeter's only goal is to get all of her passengers safely to their next destination. All of this started because Dracula happened to get onto the ship and kill the first batch of humans. Each simultaneous chapter after that basically is another short story in the world of Demeter and her AI system, Steward, as they try to continue to get their humans safely to these various locations. Along the way, they become friends with a Frankenstein, they become friends with a mummy, they become friends with a bunch of spider drones, they become friends with a werewolf, and all together they go on a rampage path to basically bring down Dracula and save Demeter. This book was absolutely hilarious. It is very, very entertaining and fun. I would definitely recommend it, and I ended up giving this book a solid 4 stars. Next up, finally finished the Green Creek series this month, and I have to say they were absolutely amazing, as has been come to be expected of the author TJ Klune. This is one of my favorite authors of all time. In this series, we're basically following a family of werewolves and witches as they basically fight for their rights to exist. It's also the fact that they are facing demons from their past due to the decisions made by their elders, and essentially this new group of characters is facing the consequences. The The idea of love, found family, and pack is very strong in this book. You also get a lot of cozy, happy moments. You also get a lot of really heartbreaking, sad moments. But throughout the series, the one thing that remained true is the writing is absolutely exceptional. The story is absolutely beautiful. And I definitely found myself laughing, sobbing, cheering the characters on throughout the course of all of these books. I will be doing an in-depth series review for this series, so stay tuned for that for more details on the book. Also, that might contain a few spoilers because it's hard to talk about these books without fully explaining some of the things that happen, which will potentially have some spoiler alerts. But overall, all I can say is TJ Klune did not disappoint. The Green Creek series are absolutely incredible. Brothersong will live with me forever. This is a solid 5-star book. Heartsong is a little bit slower. It's a little bit different. It's a memory loss trope, so I do struggle with that trope a little bit, but still the story was really fun, and I did end up giving this a 3.5. But overall, this series is definitely a 5-star series for me, and book 1 in this series is definitely a 6-star that will continue to live in my memories forever. Altogether, strongly recommend the Green Creek series. Continuing on with favorite authors, many of my favorite authors actually released books recently that were either continuations of series or conclusions in series recently, and one such book was the Breathe With Me final book by Becka Mack in the Playing for Keeps hockey romance series. Now, this is the final book that is following the story of Kara and Emmett. Kara and Emmett are the characters that are kind of woven throughout the entire series. They are the ones that support all of the other characters in the book and help them find their true love. So when I found out that she was going to be writing a story about these two characters, I was super excited, and she did not disappoint. In this book, we are basically following the journey of Kara and Emmett as they're trying to have a baby, and they basically end up facing multiple different challenges that really test their sense of self-worth, their sense of identity, their sense of relationship, their sense of community and friendship. And we really get to see the darker side of these characters, which throughout the entire course of the series, we only ever see them in a positive light, like constantly being there for other people. So it was really interesting to read that journey that these characters took and the eventual conclusion of how they come to have a child of their own. It is a beautiful, beautiful book. I would strongly, strongly recommend this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I ended up giving this book a solid 5 stars. I cried through this book. I laughed through this book. I had so much joy with this book, and with it being set in a hockey setting in Vancouver, in the cold, and just kind of spanning a bunch of time really throughout the course of the book. You could definitely read this at any season of the year, but I definitely feel like it was a great winter read. Not to be said that this was any less exciting or fun compared to the other books, but this is the young adult book of choice for this month, and that was Fake Skating by Lynn Painter. Now, Lynn Painter happens to be one of my favorite authors, and I do feel like her young adult books just hit home in a different kind of way. This particular book was very, very cute. We are following the story of Alec and his female interest, Danny. Now, Danny and Alec used to be inseparable as children. Every summer, whenever Danny's mother would bring her home to basically spend time with her best friend and her best friend's son. The mother's best friend's son was Alec. So Alec and Danny were inseparable as children. They had huge crushes on each other. They thought of each other as their everything, their world. And then eventually Danny's grandfather basically kicks out Danny's father from the home when her grandmother passes away, because he blames Danny's father for taking his daughter away from him and states that heartbreak is what led to the grandmother's passing away. So now Danny has been estranged from her grandfather forever. Her mother and father finally end up getting a divorce and come back home. And now Danny is stuck living in a town in her senior year with a grandfather who she doesn't really know how to relate to anymore, and a friend of hers who was a nerdy, geeky childhood friend who has now turned into the all-star hockey player of the town. Danny has to figure out her new way of navigating a high school. She's gone through her own experiences since she's been on the road consistently and constantly move as she is a military child. And because of that, her entire personality has changed. The way she interacts with the world has changed, which Alec is finding very hard to see. And Danny feels like Alec has turned into your classic prick of a jock. Now, that being said, they both harbor a little bit of ill will towards each other because in their own way, they feel like the other character has abandoned them and basically disappeared from their lives. And even though they're trying to navigate that negative feeling that they're having, they're also simultaneously trying to figure out how to orbit each other again in life. And While this is all happening, a series of unfortunate events essentially lead to Alec now being scrutinized as potentially a bad boy, and he needs all the college recruiters to think that he is a perfect boy because he could really go all the way with the NHL. Meanwhile, Danny's struggling to kind of fit into this new town and this new world, and she doesn't really know who the kids are that she can trust. So Alec and her eventually enter into an agreement that they are going to go through a fake dating experience until Danny calls it quits at the end of graduation, just so that they can make it through their senior year. This book was absolutely adorable. I loved every single moment of it. It was very cute. I will say it was really hard to like Alec at first, but as the book continues, you realize he's such a sweetheart. And Danny, I think I could really appreciate and love her character, even though I grew up in the town that I was born in and stayed there throughout the entire years of my schooling. I could really appreciate the pain she was going through from the memories she had created from the other schools that she had visited and other schools that she had been in for a short period of time, how easily she felt like she was forgettable. All of those things were just very well written in this book. And I think Lynn Painter did not disappoint with this book. Would definitely recommend it, and I ended up giving it a 4-star. Brynne Weaver also came out with a new book this year, and that was Tourist Season. She is the author of the Ruinous Love trilogy, which was absolutely hilarious, following the story of serial killers who end up falling in love, and she's continuing in Cape Carnage with this storyline. So we have 2 completely new characters and a new town in play. Cape Carnage is known for its theatrical history and the gruesome deaths that have occurred there. So every year, all of the citizens come together and throw a parade and a celebration for Cape Carnage that does involve creating caricatures of dismemberment and dead scarecrows and such things. So perfect home for Harper, who also happens to be a little bit of a serial killer, but she only kills those who deserve it, as well as taking care of a very dear human to her heart who is now slowly dealing with dementia, Arthur. Arthur also has a checkered past, and so Brynne has to do everything in her, not Brynne, sorry, Harper has to do everything in her power to make sure that Arthur feels safe, secure, while also remembering her and taking care of the grounds. Enter Nolan. Nolan basically is tracking down all the people who were responsible for the death of his brother in a hit-and-run car accident, and he believes Harper is the last stop. He shows up in town, ready to take her out, only to realize there's something there, and he doesn't know quite what it is. Unfortunately, the 2 rivals end up in a position where they have to pair up because a reporter has come snooping around town trying to blow open the story of Arthur and his history and the belief that the serial killer that is known to have lived in Cape Carnage is none other than Arthur. Harper will go to any lengths in order to protect him, and Nolan needs to keep his identity under check as well so he doesn't get caught. So they find themselves entering into a reluctant truce. Overall, a very funny book, very entertaining, everything you can expect of Brynne Weaver. I will say it was a little bit repetitive in terms of the vibes and the storyline, but it was still very enjoyable and very fun. And it is a new cast of characters with a new setting, and I did find that part fun. I also think the way that this book ended and the way it's setting up for the next book will be really interesting because it sounds like there's a possibility that Nolan and Harper will continue to be the main characters of this series, which I always love because then you really get to see character growth rather than reading perspectives of new characters. So we'll see how that goes. But overall, I ended up giving this book a 4 stars. Also ended up reading a couple of Greek-themed books, and that is none other than the second books in the series. We have Bonds of Hercules, which is the second book in the series by Jasmine Moss, which is the lore of villains, and the second book after Blood of Hercules. And then I also read the second book in the Crucible series by Abigail Owen. The first book was The Games Gods Play, and then now we have The Things Gods Break. Now, both of these books were absolutely excellent. In this book, we are following our main character, Lara, who has gotten stuck in Tartarus after she was tricked into opening the doors of Tartarus as she's trying to rescue Persephone. However, once she ends up trapped in Tartarus, she realizes that someone has actually been toying with time, and the stories that have been woven about the Titans being evil incarnate may be incorrect, and that someone is actually glamoring the gods. Meanwhile, Hades is doing everything he can to get Lara back, and now all the gods of all the different backgrounds are getting involved in basically shutting down his goal to open the doors of Tartarus, because they have also been taught to believe that all of the Titans are evil. Lara is meanwhile trying to escape. Boone is also present. He is the thief god that has joined her on this mission, and together they are just trying to escape, and Hades is just trying to hold it together as he is the king of the gods, and now he is also ready to burn the world down, as the prophecy has stated. Overall, book was absolutely enjoyable. It was very, very fast-paced. It was fun. Lots of trials and things like that again. So if that's something that's going to bother you, just know that there are trials that she has to go through with this book as well. But I did really enjoy the development of the characters, as well as the relationships between her and the Titans and the gods, and the interesting moments and bits where you jump back and forth in time was really fascinating as well. Very well done overall. Premise was really interesting, and I'll definitely be reading the third book in the series. I ended up giving this a 4 stars. And then as far as Bonds of Hercules goes, I do think this will be the completion of the first set of stories. So in this book, we have 4 of the Chthonic men that we are talking about, which would be Achilles, Patro, and then we also have Sharon, and we also have Augustus. And in this book, we kind of get the conclusion of the story of Alex, Augustus, and Charon. And then the next book has been set up to follow, I think, Patro, Achilles, and Medusa. So that will be really interesting. But I do think she's kind of writing it almost as 2 sets of duology. Hard to know for sure, but we do know that Alex will also be most likely present in the next 2 books as well. But I do think this was really interesting. The journey that Alex takes as she is inducted into being a full chthonic being was really interesting, as well as the games that the gods are playing between Zeus and the power-hungry Olympians versus the chthonic gods. You know, when we're talking about Athena and Aphrodite, and we're talking about Persephone and Hades, those characters are also really interesting to see as their story is kind of built up as well. I think that this book was very well done. I definitely enjoyed it. I ended up finishing it in a day and a half, physically read the whole book, and absolutely adored it. This was a solid 4-star read for me, and I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the lore series. I will do a proper, again, series reviews for these books once the series are complete. It's just a little hard to know for sure where the authors are taking these books at this point, but I can honestly say that Blood of Hercules, or Lore of Villains, has been absolutely phenomenal as well. Last but not least, I finally read my first Elin Hilderbrand book, The Academy, and this book was exquisite. I loved this book. It was so entertaining. It was such a pleasure to read. It is basically an academy setting. You have a bunch of different students who do come from a background of privilege. It is a boarding school. And basically, this boarding school has kind of always been on the lower end of the totem pole. Yeah, they have a decent amount of education that they provide their students, but they focus more on the social growth of the students as well. And so all of a sudden, the school that has always been kind of, in the 20s in terms of ratings now jumps to number 2. And this brings with it its own set of drama. We also have a gossip column that exists in the book called Zip Zap, where basically people's emails and phones are being hacked into, and their personal details are now being thrown around the entire school to read. This follows the story of multiple different characters. We have a female character named Charlie, who is new to the school, doesn't really know how to fit in, and is a little bit aloof, and the girls are trying to figure out. We have Davy Banerjee, who is Davi, who is one of the most popular girls in school, and she has her own Instagram page, and everyone follows her. Everyone wants to be with her, but unfortunately, she is dealing with her own personal issues at home and family dynamics, which has led to her dealing with some medical issues that she's keeping under wraps. We also have characters in the 6th form who are basically just looking to get into the school of their choice, and they're doing everything in their power to do so, including lying on papers. We have teachers who are very suspect in this book, who are young and enter into this novel, and it definitely paints them as antagonistic characters for sure. We have a headmistress who is just trying to get her school running. We have a main male bad boy character who just needs to keep his nose down down and graduate, but we all know he's not going to do that. So it's really fun to read his character as well. But the overall vibes of this book, the overall set of characters in this book was just very well done. From my understanding, this is going to be turned into a series, and I'm very much excited to see what the next book in this series has to offer. I loved this book. I know our discussion for book club was also very, very enjoyable for this book. And I do think that if you like anything academy setting, anything young adult coming of age, anything that has to do with questions on privilege and things like that, and definitions of what is required in order to be considered one of the best, this is a great book for you. It was so much fun to read, and I ended up giving it a solid 4 stars. And that does bring me to the conclusion of this video. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I know this one was a little bit of a long one, but again, one of my favorites. I always love doing the reading wrap-ups. I just think that books are so amazing and enjoyable. Definitely let me know if you guys have read any of these books in the comments below. Let me know which ones were your favorites. If any of this has inspired you to pick up one of them and add them to your list, definitely let me know about that, because I always like to know what you guys are reading. Once again, for those of you that are new here, thank you so much for being here. It means the absolute world to me. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday on bookish related content, and you are always welcome to join us in the community and come back for more. Definitely don't forget to hit that notification bell and that subscription button if you guys are interested in returning. For those of you that have been here since the beginning and are continuing to support me and be a part of this community and this channel, I truly appreciate you guys. I love books. I love what it represents for so many wonderful people out there. And I'm so thankful for every single one of you and every single one of your support to help me continue to grow this book channel. With that, I wanted to say I hope wherever you are, whether it's morning, evening, or night, that you guys are safe, that you guys are loved, that you guys are with family, and that this holiday season is treating you well. I hope you get lots of time for reading, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye, guys.